There is a strange innocence in not knowing the effect you have on other people. There is a power in being unaware of how your presence changes the energy in a room, how your smile makes someone's heart race, how your simple existence has become the highlight of someone else's day. This is a story about invisible impact, about someone who moves through the world not realizing they are the center of someone else's universe, and about the quiet desperation of being captivated by someone who does not even know you are watching. Cassian was 29 years old and worked as a freelance software developer, which meant he could work from anywhere. 6 months ago, he had discovered this particular coffee shop 2 blocks from his apartment, and it had quickly become his regular workspace. Not because the coffee was exceptional or the Wi-Fi was particularly fast, but because Fiona came there 3 times a week, and watching her had become the most important part of Cassian's routine. Fiona was 27 and worked as a nurse at the hospital a few blocks away. She stopped at this coffee shop before her morning shifts to get her large vanilla latte and usually a blueberry muffin. She was always in scrubs, her dark curly hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, minimal makeup, completely focused on getting her caffeine and getting to work on time. She was not trying to be noticed. She was not performing for anyone. She was just existing, just being herself, just moving through her morning routine. And somehow that authenticity was what made her so captivating. Cassian had never spoken to Fiona beyond the occasional polite nod if they made eye contact. He was too intimidated, too convinced that someone like her, someone so beautiful and seemingly confident, would never be interested in someone like him. Cassian had always been shy, always struggled with social anxiety, always felt more comfortable with code and computers than with people. The idea of approaching Fiona and starting a conversation felt impossible, like trying to speak a language he had never learned. So instead, Cassian watched from a distance. He noticed everything about her. He noticed that she always ordered the same drink, but changed her muffin flavor based on what seemed like her mood. Blueberry on calm days, chocolate chip when she seemed stressed. He noticed that she was unfailingly kind to the baristas, always remembering to say please and thank you, even when she was clearly rushed. He noticed that she sometimes took phone calls from what sounded like worried family members, and her voice would become incredibly patient and reassuring. He noticed that she had a small scar on her left wrist and a tiny tattoo of a hummingbird on her ankle that was usually hidden by her shoes, but occasionally visible when she crossed her legs while waiting for her order. What Cassian did not realize was that Fiona had actually noticed him too. Not in the same intense way he noticed her, but she had registered his presence over the months. She had noticed the quiet man in the corner who was always there on the same days she was, always at the same table, always seeming to be working, but sometimes glancing up at exactly the moment she walked in. She found his presence comforting in a strange way, like a familiar face in a routine that was otherwise full of stress and unpredictability. Fiona's life was not as put together as Cassian imagined. She was a pediatric nurse, working long shifts with sick children, and the emotional weight of that work was exhausting. She had recently ended a long-term relationship with someone who had not appreciated her dedication to her job, who had complained that she was always too tired, too emotionally drained, too focused on other people's problems. The breakup had been mutual, but still painful, and Fiona was not looking for anything romantic. She was just trying to get through her days, take care of her patients, and find small moments of peace in her routine. But there was something about the quiet man in the coffee shop that made her feel less alone. She did not know his name or anything about him, but his consistent presence was oddly reassuring. He seemed gentle, thoughtful. She sometimes caught him looking at her, and instead of feeling uncomfortable, she felt seen in a way that was not demanding or predatory. It was more like he was appreciating her existence without expecting anything from her. It was the opposite of how her ex had made her feel. One Wednesday morning, something different happened. Fiona walked into the coffee shop at her usual time, but instead of her normal composed entrance, she was clearly upset. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands were shaking as she ordered her coffee, and she seemed like she was barely holding herself together. Cassian noticed immediately and felt his chest tighten with concern. He had never seen her like this, and he desperately wanted to do something to help, but had no idea what. Fiona got her coffee, and instead of leaving immediately, she sat down at a table near the window, putting her head in her hands. Cassian watched her shoulders shake with silent sobs, and he could not bear it anymore. Before his anxiety could stop him, before he could talk himself out of it, he stood up, walked over to her table, and gently said, "I am sorry to intrude, but I have seen you here many times, and you always seem so kind and strong. Seeing you upset makes me want to help, even though we do not know each other. Is there anything I can do?" Fiona looked up, surprised, tears still streaming down her face. She recognized him as the quiet man from the corner, and something about his genuine concern broke through her reserve. "I just lost a patient," she said quietly. "A 6-year-old boy I had been taking care of for months. He did not make it through the night. And I know it is part of the job. I know I am supposed to maintain professional distance, but it hurts so much, and I have no one to talk to about it because everyone is tired of hearing about how hard my job is." Cassian sat down across from her without asking permission, his own shyness temporarily forgotten in the face of her pain. "I am not tired of hearing about it," he said. "I do not know anything about being a nurse, but I do know that caring about people, especially children, and losing them must be one of the hardest things a person can experience. And I do not think you are supposed to maintain distance from that. I think feeling the pain means you are doing it right, that you actually care. Those kids are lucky to have someone who cares that much." Fiona looked at him with an expression that was part surprise, part gratitude, part something else she could not name. "You have been watching me," she said, not accusingly, but as a statement of fact. Cassian felt his face flush. "I have," he admitted. "I am sorry if that is creepy. I just think you are remarkable. The way you are always kind to everyone, even when you are clearly exhausted. The way you take time to talk to people on the phone with such patience. The way you move through the world with this quiet strength. I've been too intimidated to ever talk to you, but I want you to know that you make this coffee shop, and honestly my whole morning, better just by being here. And I am sorry you are going through something so painful." Fiona felt tears welling up again, but for a different reason this time. This stranger, this quiet man she had barely registered, had been seeing her in a way no one else did. Not as a tired nurse who complained too much, not as someone whose emotions were inconvenient, but as someone whose strength and kindness were worth noticing. "Thank you," she said softly. "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that today. I am Fiona, by the way." "Cassian," he said, offering a shy smile. "And if you ever need someone to listen, someone who will not get tired of hearing about your difficult days, I am usually in that corner table on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays." Over the following weeks, Cassian and Fiona started talking more. What began as brief conversations in the coffee shop evolved into longer discussions. Then coffee dates outside of their regular routine. Then dinners. Then genuine friendship that was slowly transforming into something more. Fiona learned that Cassian was brilliant, funny in a self-deprecating way, deeply thoughtful, and saw her in a way that made her feel valued, for exactly who she was. Cassian learned that Fiona was even more remarkable up close than she had been from a distance. That her compassion extended to everyone around her. That her strength came not from never feeling pain, but from feeling it deeply and continuing to show up anyway. One evening, as they sat together at a restaurant, Fiona said something that had been on her mind. "You know what is strange? For 6 months, you thought I had no idea you existed. But I did notice you. I noticed that you were always there. This quiet presence that made me feel less alone, even though we never spoke. I did not realize you were watching me specifically, but I was aware of you. And now, I cannot imagine my morning routine without knowing I will see you." Is not it funny how two people can be aware of each other without realizing they are both paying attention? Cassian smiled. "I spent so much time thinking I was invisible to you, thinking you were completely unaware of the effect you had on me. But maybe the truth is, we were both seeing each other, just differently. You were not trying to be noticed, which is exactly what made you so worth noticing. And I was trying not to be seen, which is what made you feel safe around me."